Buckle in, sports fans. You're listening to The William Haynes Show. The program will be starting in just a couple of minutes, so grab your popcorn and get ready to enjoy the show. While you're waiting, make sure you're following us on social media at WHBC Stream and staying tuned to WHBCStream.com. We're so glad to have you today on the program, and we'd love to hear from you. Drop us a line on Twitter or call the show 352-639-0036. And thanks again for tuning in.
HBC. Well, it is a good evening to you and how you be here at 10:18 on a Monday night here on the William Haynes Show. Of course, always live from the WHBC studio in Tallahassee, Florida. So much to talk about. A very tight-packed, action-filled weekend in Tampa Bay sports. We had an interesting series between the Rays and the Red Sox. The Rays end up splitting that 4-game series, 2 games apiece. So we have all the takeaways from there. Also, games 3 and 4 from the Eastern Conference Finals for the Lightning. Of course, the Lightning did split those. They lose game 3, but come right back around and win game 4. That sets up a game 5 tomorrow. That will determine if the if the Lightning will win that series or have to continue playing against the Islanders. Obviously, we hope that the Lightning wrap it up, and they'll be playing most likely the Dallas Stars. They're up 3-1, but here in the game tonight in Vegas, they are down 2-1 about midway through the third period. So we will keep our eyes on that. Some Monday Night Football action here tonight. A game that just closed from MetLife in Rutherford, New Jersey. It's the Steelers 26-16 over the Giants. The Giants don't look too great. Steelers not so great themselves, but they were able to gut out a win, and Ben Roethlisberger's return, I guess, on a late career revenge tour for him, and a game that should be kicking off momentarily. The Titans and Broncos from Denver is the second game of the Monday Night Football doubleheader, and of course, probably the most impactful of all those things that I just discussed, a Buccaneers 34-23 loss at the hands of the Saints in New Orleans. Have not had a chance to go back and watch the film on that. I wanted to do that today. I'll probably have to go back and do that tomorrow and maybe discuss more in depth on tomorrow's show. But we'll kind of talk a little bit about it, do a bit of a recap, do some takeaways. Brady did not look great. 23 of 36, 239 passing yards. I mean, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, also got sacked 3 times. So there were some other things at play there. The offensive line wasn't as good, and it looked like Brady got a bit rattled as the game went on. There were some miscommunications with the wide receivers. Bruce Arians in the postgame on Sunday and also on his presser on Monday really put the blame on the 43-year-old quarterback. So that was kind of interesting to see watching the game. Joe Buck and Troy Aikman on the call. The Bucs finally getting in prime time It looked like on some of those plays that it was the receivers that were quitting on routes or not quite running the option routes that Tom Brady was hoping that they would, because that's a big part of his game. But Bruce Arians comes out and says, look, we teach our receivers to do a certain thing, and obviously it worked. The Bucs had the number one passing offense in the NFL last year, but of course with the 30 touchdowns and the 30 interceptions from Jameis Winston, it wasn't really enough to make a push at the playoffs. So the hope with this year was, with all the great weapons around Tom Brady, you put in the best to ever play the position, and you think you're set up pretty well for success. Instead, the Buccaneers start 0-1. I had predicted that the Saints would take this game in the Superdome. No fans, so not sure how much an advantage that the Saints had there being at home. But, the Vegas had them, I think, minus 3.5 for a reason. I went with the Saints with my pick. I thought it was going to take a little bit to get this offense off the ground, especially with the way that there was no preseason. There was limited training camp as well. Things weren't quite the same. We heard all the stuff, with Brady practicing with his receivers all summer, but you can't really replicate those live reps that you get on Sundays during the fall. So it's going to take a little while to get things off the ground. The Bucs are hosting the Carolina Panthers next week, so they were a team that lost to the Las Vegas Raiders at home, so they're not the best. Teddy Bridgewater had a pretty decent game, but the defense was indeed pretty bad. So you think maybe the Bucs will have a chance to get back to 1-1 and go from there. There's an extra wild card implemented into the NFL this season, so obviously the Bucs are going to have a better chance to make the playoffs in years past, even without Tom Brady, but you add him in, and as I said, you have to like your chances. It was just a really weird game. I'm going to have to go back in the film and look at some of the stuff. The offensive line really looks as bad as it has been. Donovan Smith, the left tackle, I had originally thought, because there was a lot of talk that he was going to hold out. I guess I missed the boat. He did end up playing this season. A guy that I think they're paying $14 million this year to play left tackle for him. And, he hung Tom Brady out to dry. Also, the running game, especially to the left side, was not great. Tristan Wirfs, as far as I saw, looked okay from the right side. But Cam Jordan, the defensive end for the Saints, was pretty much eating up whoever was going up against him. On paper, that's a pretty decent offensive line. Donovan Smith, the former second-round pick, they're paying him a lot of money to play left tackle. At left guard, Ali Marpet, he's been great for the Bucs. At center, Jansen has been pretty decent as well. Alex Kappa at right guard, and the first-round pick, Tristan Wirfs, on the right side. So you think that maybe they can start to get that turned around, but that was really a big part of the offense not being able to do much. In the final score, they put up 23 points, and I guess, some weeks that's going to be enough to get you a win, especially with the way the defense looked. They give up 34, well, they don't give up 34 points because the pick six from Winston, or I'm sorry, not from Winston, but from Brady. It looked a little bit like a Jameis Winston pick six, as you can tell, my subconscious is still being taken up by all those horrible Jameis Winston pick sixes, but Tom Brady had one of his own. He's actually had one in the past 3 games that he's played, so, obviously, the overreaction is that Tom Brady is, his career is done. He's too old to do it anymore at 43 years old. There really isn't any track record for a guy like that. I think George Blanda played into his 50s, I think, but that was a different NFL back then. So there really isn't, a proven anything for what a 43-year-old quarterback is supposed to do. So we're in uncharted waters right now. Hopefully, you would think that the Bucs are going to get things turned around. In the NFL, there's no such thing as an easy, really, or a difficult schedule. Every team that you're going to play on Sundays is going to be difficult. The home and road splits, I'm not sure how much that's going to take into effect, really, because the no fans. I think the Bucs, they're not, as far as I know, going to have fans this Sunday, but I think going forward, they'll have limited fans, and we won't necessarily know from there. So at 10:25, we're going to take a short little break just to allow some callers to roll in. We do have a line open and would love to hear from you. This is really a crowded season for Tampa Bay sports, so anyone that's listening, you got thoughts on anything, you want to talk Rays, we can do that. Lightning, of course. Obviously, Bucs is probably at the forefront of a lot of people's minds. Obviously, I kind of led the show with that, so anything that you want to get off your chest, also just, National Football League, you want to vent about your fantasy team, how they did, whatever. 877-566-1020 at WHBC Stream is the Twitter. You can tweet us your thoughts on there as well. We're going to take a short break. 2020 Sports Update will give you the MLB scores from tonight, and we will be right back. HBC 2020 Sports. A couple of games in the MLB that have already gone final. Game 1 of a doubleheader, the Seattle Mariners 6-5 over the Athletics are trying to jump over the Houston Astros for that second playoff spot in the AL West. In another doubleheader, Game 1, it was the Brewers 2-1 over the Cardinals in 8 innings. Final, the Marlins 6-2 over the Phillies in a makeup game at yet another doubleheader. The Reds 3-1 over the Pirates. A look at some games still in action. Game 2 of that doubleheader in Cincinnati, it's the Reds up over the Pirates 9-4. In the top of the 9th, it's the Orioles up on the Braves 14-1. In the 6th, it's the Twins and White Sox tied at 1. Bottom of the 7th and Game 2 of the doubleheader, looks like the Athletics will take that. They're up 9-0. In the top of the 5th and Game 2 of the doubleheader, Milwaukee, it's the Brewers up on the Cardinals 2-0. And out on the West Coast, in San Diego, in the 5th, it's the Dodgers up on the Padres 1-0.
Hey, sports fans! William's currently in the can, but he'll be right back. We're currently on a commercial break, so don't touch that dial. Remember, you can call us at 352-639-0036 or drop us a line on Twitter at WHBCStream to tell us what's on your mind. We want to talk sports. We want to get unruly. We want you to tell us what you think so we can argue. Anyway, when all that's said and done, please stay tuned for William's world-famous Around the XFL podcast and other projects that he's currently got in the works. Please visit WHBCStream.com, and thanks again for listening in.
Sports Radio 1019 FM. Sports Radio 636. Sports Radio
HBC. At 10:28, we are back on the William Haynes Show. Just wanted to give you some updates on some of the games that are live right now. Early in the first quarter, in Denver, it's the Broncos and Titans playing. The Titans got the ball to start things off. Tannehill took them to about midfield, but the drive stalled out, and Brett Kern pinned the Denver Broncos inside their own 10. So we'll keep an eye on that when they come back. Drew Lock and company trying to get things going for Denver. Not quite sure what the Broncos are going to be able to do. Von Miller is out for the year, so in a tough AFC West, so who knows from there. And with 5 minutes left in the third period, it's the Vegas Golden Knights up 2-1 on the Dallas Stars. Dallas holds a 3-1 lead, so it'll be Vegas looking to push a game 6 and try and stay alive. The Stars are actually on a power play. They have a minute and a half left. So again, they're down a goal with 5 minutes left in the third. So maybe they'll be able to tie it up. I know they want to take this series. They'll probably be playing the Lightning, who themselves are up 3-1 over the Islanders. So those are the games that are live right now. And again, we told you before the break, we do have a line open if you want to call in, talk anything Tampa Bay sports. Really crazy to have all three teams right now to discuss. The number to call is 877-566-1020 at WHBC Stream is the Twitter. I know we kind of led off the show with the Bucs. We'll talk about that along with the other NFL games a little bit later, mix in some lightning. I did want to lead off this part of the program, recapping the Rays games that we missed. We were off Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. The Rays were off today, so no game tonight to discuss. They'll be back tomorrow night against the Washington Nationals against it looks like Anibal Sanchez, and it'll be John Curtis opening for the Rays with Ryan Yarbrough coming behind him, I guess, which is a little bit strange. I don't necessarily understand that. We'll probably find out a little bit more about that as that game goes on. Obviously, Yarbrough coming back. He missed a time through the rotation on the injured list because of a groin strain, and he didn't exactly look great his first time back. He got beat around pretty good by the Nationals, so maybe they want to protect him a little bit. John Curtis is a pretty good reliever. He could probably give him an inning or two, potentially 3 if they needed to, but traditional opener, especially with a guy like Yarbrough behind him, you would think that It would just be an inning from Curtis. And I just want to give you this update. The Dallas Stars did score on the power play, so now with about 4 minutes left in the game, that game is tied at 2, so most likely we'll be going to overtime unless someone can break through again. If the Dallas Stars win it, they'll advance and go to the Stanley Cup Final for the first time in what I assume is forever. And if the Vegas Golden Knights can come back and win, they're down 3-1. They can force a Game 6. So we'll let you know how that game finishes out on Friday for the Rays in a really interesting game for a lot of reasons. It was the Rays over the Red Sox by a score of 11-1. They get win number 29 on the season. The winning pitcher was Blake Snell. He advances to 4-1. Goes 5 1/3, no earned runs, 5 strikeouts, 2 walks, allows 5 hits, and 103 pitches. And no earned runs. You're expecting him to get a little bit deeper into the ball game. I'll keep harping on it because it's an expectation that he placed on himself. He's a guy that wants to go 7 or 8 innings out pretty much every time, and I know that seems a little ridiculous, but he's a guy that has that kind of stuff. Mid to upper 90s fastball that has some good movement on it. He's a 4-pitch pitcher too. He throws a nice changeup off of that fastball, and then he's got a good curveball and slider combo, so he can really work all kinds of things, and it looks like he's been doing pretty good this season. Had a rough 2019, of course, that followed that 2018 Cy Young Award season, so hopefully closer to the Blake Snell of 2018, especially as the Rays head into the postseason. But it was a 5 1/3 of no-run ball for Snell getting the win on Friday night. And I think I probably should have led off with this. It was the Rays. Their lineup included 9 left-handed hitters, true lefties, no switch hitters. And why that's important is because that's the first time in the recorded modern era, which I believe is 1900 or 1905, something like that, to the present year. No team has ever done that, 1 through 9, all lefty bats. And they didn't have any pinch hits or substitutions, so they left all lefties in there. So, I mean, that it was interesting to see them do that. They had done a lot of extreme splits, like against a righty, they would go maybe 8 lefties and 1 righty, or 7 lefties, 2 righties, and then the other way for a lefty starting pitcher. But they saw a matchup that they liked against Aaron Triggs, who started off the righty, who only ended up giving them an inning. Maybe they saw some extreme splits that the lefties was more effective, or they wanted to mix it up because the offense has been a little bit stagnant as of late. But it works for him, obviously, to the tune of 11 runs. It was 4-0 when Blake Snell exited, so, a lot of those runs came in garbage time, but an experiment really, I guess, for Kevin Cash that ended up working out. Meadows, he goes 1 for 4, knocks in a couple of runs, also walks. His average is up to 207, so he's trying to work his way back up there. Wendell gets a couple of hits. Yoshi gets a couple of hits, and Nate Lowe goes 3 for 4 RBIs, so 2 home runs for Nate Lowe. The first one where he took out a cardboard cutout in the, I believe, the right field stands. That was his first homer of the season, and he's really heated up over the course of the weekend. So with Ji-Man Choi with a grade 1 hamstring strain, he's going to miss the rest of the regular season, about 2 to 3 weeks. So who knows even about his postseason availability. So that was the reason why Nate Lowe coming around with the bat is so crucial, because he's one of the top guys that's going to take over maybe that job at first base. And now, once again, they can really go to, a righty-lefty platoon. You have the lefty Lowe who can play first base. I came up in the minors doing that, did that last year, but can also play third base. And you have a utility guy, Mike Brasso, a righty, who has now just this year started to play some first base. So they have some options there. Again, I know, Choi going down hurts. He was going to be a valuable asset, I think, going into the playoffs. It seems like, a guy that his biggest at-bats are in the biggest moments. So I think, obviously, you want Choi. Who knows? The hamstring is a little bit concerning for Choi because of what he does at first base, with the stretching. Is dang near doing a split to pick those balls out of the dirt at first base. So I'm a little questionable about basically how his season is going to finish out. Yanni Diaz is on the injured list. He's a guy that can play first and third. I don't think he's played first at all this year. Pretty much his third and a lot of DHing. So, they're going to have guys that they can rotate in. That's a part of this depth that this roster has. But Choi did not get injured on Friday night. He went 1 for 3 with a couple of walks. Of course, that's the trademark Ji-Man Choi game. Again, I said Nate Lowe with the 2 home runs. Snell struggled a little bit with efficiency. He came out to start the 6th and then put a man on in a 4-0 game. At that time, they decided to pull him at 103 pitches, only 62 for strikes. He faced 22 batters and only threw a first pitch strike to 9 of those batters. So I think, that's a part of it. He's not a guy that likes to throw strikes. It seems like on every broadcast, Dave and Andy, will mention that he's a guy that really tries to strike everyone out, and that's fine, but that does not work for pitch efficiency. A lot of the guys, that get all the complete games, Kyle Hendricks, we see it, the Ryan Yarbrough types that can really get deep into a ball game easy. It's not like they're blowing anything by these hitters, striking everybody out, but they, you get weak contact early in counts to get outs. That's how you get deep into a ball game. And for Snell, a guy who says all the time he wants to go 7-8 innings to start, that's not going to be the case. But I think in a postseason game, especially in that best of 3, with the way the bullpen is going to set up, if you can get 5 or 6 innings of no-run ball from Blake Snell, that's going to be more than enough. So I think ultimately you're okay with that. And I just, not to interrupt, but I just wanted to mention the Stars and Golden Knights are going to overtime. The Stars tied it up on a power play late in the contest, so 2-2 will be headed to overtime. So the Rays win 11-1 against Boston on Friday. There's no real, takeaways outside of that. The Red Sox had not been shut out at any game at any point this year. They're a 16-30 team, so obviously not very good, but they've always got on the board, and they had them scoreless until the 9th inning in an 11-0 game when, of course, who else but Aaron Loup gives up a run. So, if you ever needed a reason to dislike Loup more, there you go. But 11-1, good win. We head off to Saturday's 5-4 win. This one was a little more entertaining. The Rays get win number 30 on the season. I believe they were the first to get to 30 in the American League, and I think they're tied with the best record, I want to say, with the Chicago White Sox. It's good to see the Rays at 30-16 after that game. Obviously a really good record, a chance to really start putting things away in the American League East. Austin Meadows, who's been kind of cold as of late, he led the whole thing off with a home run in the leadoff spot and starts it off against Nate Eovaldi in kind of a rehab start for him. So Austin Meadows starts it off with a home run, and that set the tone. That made it 1-0. In the game, it was tied 4-4 in the 7th. Brandon Lau hit a home run there that won it. So that was good to see. Certainly on the day, Brandon Lau batted second. That was his only hit. He goes 1 for 4, that solo homer. Arozarena goes 0 for 4 with 3 strikeouts. Not a great start for him. Choi in a pinch hit spot. Or no, not in a pinch hit spot. He was the DH. He goes 1 for 1 and with a walk and came across to score. But it was on the slide to home plate in the middle of the game that an issue with his hamstring. And again, as I said, it is a grade 1 hamstring strain, and he's going to miss about 2 to 3 weeks. I guess that's the track record for that kind of diagnoses. But Kevin Cash mentioned, the quote was that he's going to miss the rest of the regular season. And as I say all the time, it's not about as much what this team is going to do in September. It's about what they can do now to set themselves up for success in October. So obviously missing G-Man Choi, not too big a deal. It sucks. He's fun to watch. It makes it more fun to sit down and watch a Rays game night in and night out. And he brings some good energy to the team. So that kind of stuff they'll miss. I'm sure he'll still be hanging around the team, with a strain like that. I'm sure he'll be at the Trop every day, doing the kind of rehabs and stuff. So, not exactly gone and certainly not forgotten, but Choi there when he came across to score with the hamstring strain, we know from that. Margot went 2 for 3 as well. I think he's going to be a valuable kind of piece. I don't know about in the playoffs, but he's a guy. He's at the. I think he's top 3 in all of majors with stolen bases with 11. I think is where he's at right now. He was caught stealing in this one, but. Again, 11 steals. And that was something I was thinking about as I was going back and going through that game. I think I'm not sure that this team in 2020 is as good as the 2019 team, but this year's edition is a little bit better in certain categories. I think they run the bases a little bit better. They've got a lot of guys who can pinch run. In close games, of course, in the playoffs, a stolen base, especially getting from first to second, is such a big deal, when you're struggling to get a run. If you can just get a man on with the walk, which the Rays have been so good at doing, even if you're facing these kind of aces, like let's say, I think they're lined up to go against the Yankees in a 3-game set as of right now. If you're going against Garrett Cole and you can't get a run, well, you get a man on base with the walk, and then you get Manny Margot on the base path, maybe that can steal second, and then all of a sudden it's just a single to drive in a run. That kind of stuff is huge, especially in the postseason. So just seeing what he's doing, and obviously they have some other guys. Arosa Reina is great on the base path. Brett Phillips, a guy, I don't think he's really going to see any playing time in the postseason. He really hasn't seen much time in the regular season, but he's a guy that can pinch run off the bench. Joey Wendell, he stole a base in this one, his 6th. So they've got guys top to bottom. I think, the power, and maybe the hitting last year, I would say it was probably a little bit better. Obviously, Al Garcia, Tommy Pham, Travis d'Arnaud. You lose all those guys, but I think you get a little bit quicker on the base path, and I think we're going to see potentially in a big spot that's going to make a difference. We go to the pitching side in Saturday's 5-4 win. It was Tyler Glasnow getting the win. It seems like there's always an issue with him in every start. He goes 7 innings strong, giving up 4 runs, 102 pitches, 72 for strikes. He advances to 3-1 on the year. And his last time out, I think he scratched out 5 or so runs against the Marlins, and he admitted after the game he was dealing with some migraines, including some visual impairments. With the migraine, which is never easy pitching in the major leagues. And in this game, there was an issue, I guess, with his thumb where it split open of some sort and there was bleeding. I think they were trying to super glue it or something on the mound, and I guess there's a rule, obviously, the foreign substance with the pitchers that you can't do that. So he was, as he said in the postgame, he was spinning bloody baseballs. He's like, I think the rule's down with the foreign substance. Can't put super glue to seal it, but I can be throwing bloody baseballs at people with all the COVID stuff going around. So that was kind of funny. He had it all. He had the blood all over his pants. I couldn't imagine that would be easy, on your throwing hand to have your thumb bleeding, but that was good enough. As we saw Blake Snell just a night ago on Friday, basically that same pitch count, 102, but he only gets 5 1/3. The difference here, Glasnow, the same pitch count, there was a lot more strikes and gets 7 innings, which is huge for the bullpen. And in a close game that really allowed them to set it up the way that they wanted to, Glasnow gets the win only because, he leaves in a tie game and Brandon Lau gets the home run, the solo shot to make it 5-4 in the 7th. And then you can go to your A bullpen. They go to Nick Anderson, who has yet to allow an earned run this year. Seeing those 0-0-0 on the ERA is just amazing. He pitches a clean inning in the 8th, and it's Diego Castillo getting the save in the 9th, and he gives up a hit and strikes out too, and both of those pitchers performed great. Anderson, 10 pitches, 8 strikes. Castillo, 11 pitches, 8 strikes. Castillo's ERA is down to 2.04, so obviously the lockdown bullpen is there. It's good to see Nick Anderson, although he's kind of been used sparingly, to be honest. The spots just really hasn't been calling for him, but he looked a little bit shaky his first game off the injury list, but the fact that he's that same automatic 1-2-3 inning every time he comes out, that's really, really crucial as part of what they're going to do. Oliver Drake, we have not seen him. It was looking like they were going to be able to activate him, and I think I think if they have not made the move yet, I believe that's the move that will be made with G-Man Choi going to the injured list and probably Oliver Drake being reinstated off of it. So they'll be able to get him back in the mix. I say all the time, Oliver Drake, a guy that can get righties and lefties out. So the A bullpen is starting to take shape once again. I'm not sure where Jose Alvarado fits into that picture, but you have guys like, John Curtis, Ryan Thompson maybe in the postseason, probably in a 6th inning, I would say is kind of his spot. You want to bring him in with runners on base. He's inherited 10 and has allowed none of them to score, has Thompson. That's really been his calling card this year. So you look up and down, and it was the same with the bullpen last year. Each guy serves a specific role, and they have something that they're very good at, and Cash and company along that coaching staff is so great about taking advantage of that. So that was all the takeaway. That you couldn't ask if you're a manager for a better game than that. Glasnow gives you 7 strong, and then all you need is 2 innings from your A bullpen, 1 apiece from Anderson and Castillo, and of course the clutch home run in the 7th from Brandon Lau was good to see. So it looks like right now both Meadows and Lau, who are having extreme slumps, are beginning to turn it around a little bit. Lau with a 258. Meadows with a 2.08. So, they're your 1-2 hitters right now. So, they're going to be huge. Not great to see Randy go 0 for 4 or Rosarena. But that's going to be ups and downs, especially with the young players coming up. And it looks like Willie Adames' struggles are continuing too. He went 0 for 3 on Saturday, did score on a walk, but his average is down to 283. So that's about really it that we have to say about Saturday's 5-4 win. And then last, and I guess you could say least if you wanted to, Sunday 6-3 loss. That sealed the split in the 4-game series. Tampa Bay ends up winning the season series 7-3. So that was good to see them dominate both the Yankees and the Red Sox, to go 8-2 against the Yankees, 7-3 against the Red Sox. I think going into this year, that's a really big thing. Obviously, kind of off years for both those teams. Looks like the Yankees, after dipping down to 500 a week or so ago, they're going to make the playoffs. Either as the second place team in the division or as the wild card. The hope that we had lined out that another team was going to be able to come out and steal their spot, that's just not going to be the case. And it looks like it may be the Yankees playing the Rays in the first round of the playoffs, which you don't necessarily love, because it looks like it'll be Giancarlo Stanton and Aaron Judge coming off the injured list in due time. So, but obviously that's a couple weeks down the road. I guess I don't necessarily thrilled about talking about the loss on Sunday, 6-3. I'm not sure how many people were tuned into it. Obviously, that was the first pitch at about 1 o'clock. That's right when NFL football was getting started. Of course, the Rays played at 4:30, so I guess you could have had a chance to watch it if you wanted to. It was a bit of a rough outing for Morton. They're still getting him built back up. He goes 4 1/3, 77 pitches, 55 strikes, 6 hits, 3 earned runs, no walks, which is good, 4 strikeouts. I mean, as I said, they're getting him built back up. He went 5 innings his last time out and was really efficient in that one. So I guess in some ways maybe took a bit of a step back. I mean, he went 5 innings and only 57 pitches, and on Sunday he goes 4 1/3 and 77. So the pitch count is getting built back up, but the efficiency not so much. So I'll mention it again. It's not about September; it's about October. Obviously, you're gonna trot Morton out there right now, not because you don't necessarily need the win, but you need Morton to be built back up. This was not a great sign in that, but of course he'll probably have a chance to start maybe 2, 3 more games, depending on how aggressive. I would imagine probably just 2 more starts out of him. They want to have him ready to go out of the gate in the postseason, and doing that, only 2 starts, they may line him up to maybe have him start game 1 of that first 3-game series, and then maybe have Snell followed by Glasnow, and I think that's really an unbeatable 1-2-3 if all those 3 guys are at their best. It looks like Glasnow and Snell is at their best, and the hope is that Morton is going to get there, but he leaves in a tie game. It was 3-3, and then Fairbanks comes in immediately and gets the loss, gets 2 outs but gives up an earned run, and then Thompson an inning later gives up another 2, and that put it away. Aaron Slegers, the sledgehammer, finishes it off with 3 scoreless innings, throwing only 38 pitches, so that's good to see. Something for Morton. Again, the pitch count to strike ratio 77-55. He faced 19 batters and threw first pitch strike to 11 of them. So, the command, I guess, was there. The 6 hits, that was probably just he had trouble with that in his last start. The curveball wasn't quite sweeping. He was hanging some fastballs, probably in spots that he didn't want to. But again, we'll see him. It looks like right now, as we look at the schedule, it's going to be a little weird because of the doubleheader with Baltimore coming up, but it looks like his next start will be somewhere in that series. ESPN has him slated on a Saturday night in Baltimore against the Orioles. So, that's a competitive, scrappy Orioles team. I think they're kind of on the outside looking in as far as playoffs. It doesn't look like they're going to be able to make it. But they, especially in Camden Yards in Baltimore, they always give the Rays some trouble, and it looks like he's going to start on that final weekend. The way the rotation looks now on Friday, September 25th, at home against the Phillies, one of his former teams. So. Again, as I said, it looks like he's going to get 2 more starts to get this thing figured out, and the hope is that he'll be able to do so. a 6-3 game with the way the Rays are right now. Not that you can make too much of it. It was not good to see Fairbanks and Thompson do what they did. Equally, I was going to say maybe more so one over the other, but both those guys have been big performers. With all the injuries, Fairbanks has really come on as an A-type reliever. So to see him come in after Morton leaves and give up the lead, or give up the tie, I should say, that was not good. And then Thompson, gave up a run, or gave up 2 runs in an inning of work. So that's not necessarily great to see. And the offense couldn't really come back much. It was Brasso in the first with an RBI double. That was nice to see. He's going to be one of the replacements along with Nate Lowe at first base. So it's good to see both of those guys hitting well right now. And then Kevin Smith, his first homer as a Ray in the 4th inning. A 2-run shot, 426 feet to left, that made it 3-2 Rays, and of course it was the bullpen that couldn't quite hang on to things. So that's about it. I would say Margot led off. He goes 1 for 5. You look down the list. It was only Brasso with the multi-hit game. He goes 2 for 5. So not really a lot across the board. I'll preview tomorrow's game at the end of the show. It's at 6:40 first pitch tomorrow night in Tropicana Field against the Washington Nationals. It'll be Anibal Sanchez versus John Curtis, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. At 10:51, we're going to take a short break again. We'll see if there's any updates in the baseball scores. When we come back, we'll talk a little bit about the Lightning and games 3 and 4 against the Islanders, and some more NFL football and some more Bucs. We'll get all that covered. Again, a number to call during the break. We do have a line open, 877-566-1020. Here's the baseball scores. HBC. Some games that we discussed last time, a little bit deeper into action. In the 7th, it's the Twins and White Sox still tied at 1. In the 6th of game 2 of a doubleheader, it's the Brewers up over the Cardinals 2-1. In the 6th, it's the Dodgers and Padres still tied at 1. And final, it was the Reds 3-1 over the Pirates in the other game of their doubleheader. And that's about all we have right now in Denver with about a minute left in the first quarter. It is the Broncos and Titans still scoreless. In the other game of the Monday night doubleheader, it was the Pittsburgh Steelers up over the Giants in New York, 26-16.
Hey, sports fans! William's currently in the can, but he'll be right back. We're currently on a commercial break, so don't touch that dial. Remember, you can call us at 352-639-0036 or drop us a line on Twitter at WHBCStream to tell us what's on your mind. We want to talk sports. We want to get unruly. We want you to tell us what you think so we can argue. Anyway, when all that's said and done, please stay tuned for William's world-famous Around the XFL podcast and other projects that he's currently got in the works. Please visit WHBCStream.com, and thanks again for listening in.
Sports Radio 101.9 FM. Sports Radio 66. Sports Radio
HBC. And at 10:54, we are back on the William Haynes Show. During the break, it was the Broncos taking the lead on a nice pass from Drew Lock. So now the Denver, with about 30 seconds left in the first quarter, take a 7-0 lead over the Titans at home. So that'll be an interesting game as that comes down to a stretch. It'll probably still be in the first half by the time we go off the air. Probably about another 20 minutes left in the program, as I just wanted to talk Lightning games 3 and 4 and Bucs, and maybe a little bit over some other NFL games. Haven't been able to watch as much film as I would have liked today, so we'll be able to go more in depth about the Bucs loss tomorrow. And also overtime underway in Edmonton. It's the Vegas Golden Knights and Dallas Stars tied at 2. Dallas with a 3-1 series lead, so the Stars can punch their ticket to the Stanley Cup Final with a goal here, and if they don't, it'll be Vegas forcing a Game 6, and who knows what happens from there. So basically whatever I'm talking about when I see the goal, no matter what side, I'll just interrupt and let you know who ended up winning that game. But we do have a line open right now. If you're listening and would like to give us a call, we'd love to hear from you. You want to talk Rays, Bucs, Lightning, whatever you have on your mind. 877-566-1020 with you for about another 20 minutes or so. So when we left you on Thursday night, it was the Lightning with a 2-0 series lead. They win Game 1 by a score of 8-2, and that was really the product of that. It wasn't necessarily representative of anything particular. It was the Lightning had some time off after they won a quick series with the Boston Bruins. They win it in 5 games, so they had some time off. They got an early start to Edmonton, obviously the East playoffs coming over from Toronto, and then the New York Islanders were having to gut out a 7-game series with the number 1 seed Flyers, so they were a little bit tired, obviously, coming into Edmonton, and the Lightning blow them up 8-2 in Game 1, and then in Game 2, it was a nice close win for the Lightning. They win 2-1, so a 2-0 series lead. You liked kind of where the Lightning were at there. Vasilevsky had played well in the first 2 games, and then I believe it was Friday night. Yes, it was Friday. It was the Islanders finally coming back and winning 5-3 to make it 2-1. Some takeaways from there. It was surely a game of grit. The Lightning looked good. They just the Islanders goalie Varlamov was certainly tough behind net. He only gave up 3 goals. With Point and Killorn out, it was visible the team was off on their play, but Yanni Gourde stepped up for Braden Point and ties the game at 1 apiece in the first. So it was a game, obviously losing Killorn to the suspension and Point for the injury. It was a little bit decimated Lightning team, although especially at the forward position, they have a lot of depth. There's a lot of other guys that can come up, and obviously Yanni Gourde, one of them that played pretty well. The defense did good in front of Vasilevsky, but the Islanders, obviously, they were able to gut out 5 goals, and part of that was in part to the power play stuff. The Lightning they capitalized on their power play, but it wasn't quite as good. That's been kind of a part of the weak point for the Lightning this year, as has kind of been their penalty kills at times. They need to be conscious of the penalties they are taking and take less penalties. It seems like they're kind of sloppy in that regard. The Islanders have one heck of a power play, and they took advantage, obviously, to the tune of 5 goals in a win, to make it 2-1. The Lightning trailed going into the third period until Palat and Johnson scored to tie the game. So they really had a chance, to go up 3-0. But then it was Nelson for the Islanders firing a great shot to take the Islanders up 4-3. It was a weird play where he got out in front of the net. There wasn't anyone defending him, just out on the right wing, kind of by the face-off circle, and got it in against Vasilevsky, who was having to come from his right over to his left and just couldn't get over there in time. And then they tried to come back, but they gave up an empty netter, so be it. That was the 5-3. So basically 4 goals, and the power play was good on that. And then on Sunday, the Lightning come back from that and win Game 4 by a score of 4-1. Another great game by Vasilevsky. He's been the top performer in 2 of these 4 games. He's really been a calling card for the Lightning. So now they take a 3-1 lead after Sunday's game. Some takeaways from there. The Lightning crashed the net more in the game, which allowed for more rebounds and scoring chances. But Varlamov, again, the goalie, stays strong, at least in the first period. The Lightning don't capitalize on the power play as much as they had in previous games during the playoffs. The Islanders open up the scoring in the second period. The Lightning answer back with 15 seconds to make it 1-1. It was Brandon Coleman on a breakaway, so that was nice to see. Not necessarily a guy that contributes a lot as much as the offensive or the scoring. He's kind of more of a beat-em-up type forward, but he ended up cashing in on a breakaway goal, so that's good to see. And then 12 seconds later, Andre Palat scores to make it 2-1. So obviously a very busy 30 seconds there, and then that obviously made the difference. Lightning had a great penalty kill, allowed no power play goals in Game 4. Point, Palat, and Kucherov are forced to be reckoned with, obviously. That's a really tough line to defend. Point and Kucherov, 2 of the best scorers really in the NHL, and you throw Andre Palat, who's been very, very good in this playoffs, ended the series in Game 5 in double overtime. to close out the series against the Bruins, and he's really come up throughout the playoffs. The Islanders attempted to crash the net, but Vasilevsky stays strong and makes great saves. And then it was Braden Point scoring on a pass from Andre Palat. Again, that line coming up again to make it 3-1. Point and Palat both earned an assist and a goal in the game. It's evident that Point adds to the success of the team. Good that he was back. Obviously, they lose with him off the ice in Game 3. He comes back in Game 4, and they get the win. The Islanders pull their goalie with under 3 minutes left to attempt to score, but Patrick Maroon answers with an empty net goal to make the score 4-1. So that was really good to see. Obviously, they'll have a chance tomorrow night to put it away at 8 o'clock. So we'll be on the air probably as that game is going on. The Rays game starts at 6:40, and obviously we'll be on right after the final out. So my guess is that would be right at around 9:30 or 10. So yes, the Lightning game that might be in the late stages, but obviously that would be great to be on the air as that game and potentially the series closes, as the Lightning would then be punching their ticket to the Stanley Cup final. If that was the case, we'll try and get Aaron on the line. We'll do it, the whole blowout thing. Obviously not as much as a Stanley Cup celebration, but. It is what it is. And as I'm talking, I realize I totally kept my eye off the monitor, and I look up and I see the Vegas Golden Knights and Dallas Stars shaking hands at mid-ice. And if you watch hockey in the playoffs, you know that only means one thing. It was the Dallas Stars getting a goal in the first overtime to win that series, and won it rather convincingly against the number 1 seed Golden Knights. So the Dallas Stars, they're going to be a tough team. Ben Bishop, he's not, I guess, the starting goalie right now. They have another guy behind him. I think that's been playing pretty well. I could be missing that. That's not a series I've really kept my eye too much on. But the Dallas Stars have been red hot in the playoffs. It looked like they weren't necessarily going to have the offense to keep up with some of these teams, but they had a good defense and obviously some good goaltending. We know from Bishop, who I know at least played in the regular season. So, but the offense caught fire at the right time, and they've really blown their way through this postseason. And it's good enough to punch their ticket to the Stanley Cup final. So they'll either be playing the Tampa Bay Lightning or the New York Islanders, and with the Lightning up 3-1, you think it will be the Tampa Bay Lightning that will be there to face them. So obviously that will be a good series to cover, and we'll be on the air during all that. It is a really interesting time to be covering Tampa Bay sports. Obviously the Rays, one of the better teams they've fielded in their team's history in a really weird 60-game season. We're halfway through the month of September, only about 13 or 14 games or so to go. I know the Rays' magic number is somewhere around 6. That might have been lowered since the last time I checked. So they're really close to clinching. There was an interesting article from Mark Tompkin that a little bit celebrations, I guess because of the COVID, they're not going to be able to do the champagne stuff, which is really a darn shame. A darn shame. I mean, it's just that's really part of the joy of baseball. So I'm sure they'll still have it at a ballroom in the hotel or wherever they are when that happens. But it won't be on camera, I guess, because of the COVID stuff. That's not very, I guess, mindful to social distancing. If you went back and watched the post-game celebration in Toronto when the Rays clinched for the first time since 2013. That was an absolute kind of madhouse there in the road locker room. So nothing quite like that. It looks like maybe even if they advance in the postseason, it's not going to be that way. So not as much affecting things on the field, but I think as a fan viewing from home. But I'm missing the point. With the Rays they'll be making the playoffs and maybe winning the American League East for the first time in 10 years. Yes, they haven't won it since 2010, and that would be the third time in their 2 years of history that they have won the division. So that would be huge, certainly for them. They won't be able to bounce the Yankees from the playoffs, unfortunately, but they're going to be a contender in the American League. The Bucs, obviously, with Tom Brady, they're 0-1, but that's going to be an interesting series to cover, no doubt. And we have the Lightning, who's potentially maybe a week and a half, 2 weeks away from potentially hoisting the Stanley Cup over their heads. I'm interested to see if Steven Stamkos doesn't travel with the team from Toronto as the captain, he won't be able to hoist it. I think I want to say Victor Hedman, the alternative captain, which I guess he would be the one to hoist. So how strange would that be after all of these years of being the captain of the Lightning? And if the Lightning do finally get over the hump, if it's not Stamkos to hold the cup over his head, that would just so many weird things about 2020, and I think that would be, as a Tampa Bay sports fan, probably at the top of your list. And now, final 10 minutes or so of the show, what we're going to do, talk some NFL football. I'm not sure there's much, at least right now, of the Bucs that I want to talk about. If you're listening, you want to talk about any of those things that I've discussed over the course of the show, number to call, 877-566-1020. Again, it was the Saints over the Bucs 34-23 in the Superdome. I kind of already covered it. The offensive line did not look great. That's obviously going to be a point of concern. Brady, 23 for 36, 2 picks. He does not have many, multiple interception games in his career. I believe last year he only had 14 to his name, so he's not a guy that turns it over a lot. Obviously, Winston with the 30 last year. The hope was that Brady was going to be able to limit some of those turnovers, but at least you look in the stat sheet right now, it doesn't look like much has changed. 2 interceptions already after week 1. They're playing the Panthers at home on a 1 o'clock game. I think the thought is that they'll be able to come back from a Panthers team that had a tough loss to the Vegas Golden Knights at home. So I think that looks good moving forward. Obviously, we'll preview that game over the course of the week. It was Ronald Jones making it clear that he's going to be the lead bell cow, getting 17 carries to the tune of 66 yards, but just to under 4 yards a carry, which is decent. But if you take out his long rush of 21 yards, obviously that yards per carry goes down pretty greatly. Outside of that, it was a lot of 2 to 3 yard rushes. On the first drive, they were really run heavy, and it set up some nice play action and stuff. And I think after that first drive, when they made it 7-0, it almost seemed like we were ushering in a new age of Buccaneers football. But instead, it looks like it's more the same. It's an 11-point loss to the Saints, who obviously are the favorites to win the NFC South. And the other running backs that they've acquired, obviously LaShawn McCoy, he's been with the team for a couple weeks, and Leonard Fournette, who just joined the team this week. He has 5 rushes for 5 yards, a long of 6. So you can pretty much do the math. Outside of that one rush, it was really tough sledding for him. It was funny that he said, this is just an interesting side note. Leonard Fournette, after he signed with the Bucs, he said he signed with Tampa Bay because he finally wanted to play with a good quarterback in the NFL. Obviously, a top 5 pick of Jacksonville. He had played with pretty much just Blake Bortles, a little bit of Gardner Minshew, Nick Foles mixed in there. And it was Minshew going 19 for 20 and 3 touchdowns. Meanwhile, Brady, 2 interceptions, including a pick 6. So irony, however you want to describe that was interesting. But Fournette himself didn't have much of a game. And LaShawn McCoy with only 1 touch in the game, a catch for 2 yards. So, and that was, his only target as well. So, I don't get it. I didn't really get the move to get him. Maybe it's going to take some time to get him mixed into the offense, but it looks like Rojo is really, he had 3 targets as well, including 2 catches. So he had basically 20 touches in the game. So, and he looks like he's running a little bit better. There was some talk out of camp that the running backs weren't catching the ball well. I know that's Brady's favorite thing to do is to throw to the running backs, in the flats and for the checkdowns, from all that. If you've watched any Patriots football over the course of, say, the last 20 years. So it was weird to see that. It looks like this age of Tom Brady, kind of the prove the haters wrong Tom Brady moving on from the Patriots. It seems like he may be casting some of that check down stuff to the wayside and kind of buying into Coach Arians' no risk it, no biscuit. There was not a lot of check downs. It was a lot of deep down the field stuff and really some nice touch throws, things that we have not seen over the past 5 years. With Jameis Winston, that's something certainly that he does not bring to the table, more of just a hard thrower type. So it was nice to see him get some deep balls. It was a frustrating game for Mike Evans, 4 targets. He only had 1 catch. It was a 2-yard touchdown in garbage time. A really frustrating game. He's only had, I want to say, 2 or 3 games in his NFL career where he has been held against when he has been held without a catch, and those both came against the Saints cornerback Marshawn Lattimore, again, who he faced this week. And it seemed, for whatever reason, Lattimore really frustrates Evans. They were kind of getting into some trash talk stuff after the whistle, and obviously the goal of a cornerback doing that is to get a wide receiver off his game. And that's really exactly what happened. I think there was a couple of pass interference calls that went in favor of Mike Evans, and I guess that transitions me to another point that I had. The officials certainly were not on the side of the Bucs. They got a lot of bad breaks. There was one early in the game on 3rd and long where there was nice pass deflection. It was a couple of guys. I want to say there was a safety. I don't know if it's Antoine Whitfield, and there was a cornerback. I don't know. Everyone changed numbers for whatever reason this offseason, so it's going to take me some time. But it was not pass interference, and they call it on 3rd and long. And they get a first down basically in the red zone, and it was a screen to Alvin Kamara, and he basically goes untouched into the end zone. So things like that, who knows how the game would have gone differently. And Tom Brady was obviously upset about a couple of calls. There was some some defensive pass interferences, I think, that were missed, although they did get some, and the offensive line, I think, really is the most concerning thing. Even though they gave up basically 27 points, the defense did. I think they looked really good, and this is, I think, really one of the biggest points as well. Under Todd Bowles last year, not necessarily great in terms of yards allowed or really points allowed, but they had the best rushing defense in the NFL, almost a dead last passing defense, although that was, just because the teams were just going to throw in them. Obviously, the Bucs have made some additions with the defensive backs and things like that. But one of the things they did so well, again, under defensive coordinator Todd Bowles, is kind of just stymie the top threat in these offenses, kind of a Bill Belichick mindset where you make the other guys beat us. And you look at the 3 levels, Drew Brees passing 18 for 30, 160 yards. I mean, if you had said that, you would think the Bucs would have won, and pretty handily. Instead, they don't. In a big spot, it seemed like it was always Taysom Hill getting some wildcat looks. He had a pass for 38 yards. So obviously, this is not the same Drew Brees. I'd expected that going into the season, but it looks like the Saints have a good enough team around him to kind of overcome that. And then from the rushing standpoint, Alvin Kamara, 12 carries for 16 yards. So an average of 1.3 yards per carry. You stymie him. And don't you know, the wide receiver Michael Thomas, who set the record for most receptions in a season, breaking, I think, Jerry Rice's record. You hold him to 3 catches and 17 yards. So, at those 3 levels, you would think that the Bucs would have had a lot of success. And I think that's where you take the positive from the defense and kind of move on over the course of these next 16 weeks. They're going to be able to lean on the defense at times, and they really did do that in week 1, but they did it a little bit too much. Just too many drives that stalled out. There was some 3-and-outs, some issues. You look at the receiver standpoint, Chris Godwin, who we expected to have a good season under Tom Brady, playing with an accurate quarterback. Godwin's such a good route runner. He's the leading receiver, 6 catches for 79 yards. Scotty Miller, that was a guy, another out of the slot that would be good with Brady, 5 catches, 73 yards. The tight end Howard, 4 catches, 36 yards with a touchdown. So that was good to see. The first touchdown of the game was a patented Brady quarterback sneak and the emphatic spike down. That was pretty nice to see. Gronk with only 2 catches for 11 yards. There was a designed screen to him that I know was one of his catches. The Saints, they were really jamming him at the line, double or triple coverage. Obviously a guy that Tom Brady would want to go to that he has chemistry with, not able to do that. And then there was a variety of other guys that had a catch or two. Obviously Mike Evans with the 1 catch for 2 yards and a touchdown at garbage time. So, he gets on the board. Whoop-de-doo. And then from the defense, last thing that I'll say about it before I go back and look at film tomorrow, Lavonte David, he's the same old guy, 11 total tackles, 2.5 for loss as quarterback hit. Devin White, a guy that Troy Aikman said on the broadcast, if he plays as good as he did in the second half of last year, could be a candidate for Defensive Player of the Year. 11 tackles himself as well, 2 for loss, including a pass defense. The cornerbacks, more the DBs. Jamel Dean had 7 tackles, but did not look good in pass coverage. It's been an interesting experience with him in the secondary dating back to last year. Golston, the defensive lineman, 2 tackles for loss. He had a nice game. Antoine Whitfield, the safety, the rookie from Minnesota, starting over, some guys, I believe like Mike Edwards. He had a decent game, 6 tackles, a tackle for loss. Got lost in pass coverage a couple of times, but, that's something that he's going to have to figure out. He also had a pass defense and a quarterback hit, so he got in there as well. And you look down the line, there was only 1 sack in the game. It was for JPP. He had 1.5 tackles for loss. So they really didn't have a lot of success in getting to Brees, but it did look like they stuffed the run game really well. Obviously, I gave you Kamara stats, 12 carries, 16 yards. But in fact, the leading rusher, Latavius Murray, 15 carries for 48 yards. So they hold him to 3.2 yards per carry as well. Again, the best rushing defense in the NFL a season ago, more of the same. They're facing an offense that relies pretty heavily on Christian McCaffrey, although Bridgewater did look decent in his debut. I think the caveat on that, it's a Las Vegas Raiders defense that is not good any way that you slice it. So that's really going to be an interesting game, and I think we're all kind of waiting till next Sunday till that goes out. And then really the only thing else that we have to discuss, more NFL action right now in the second quarter. The Titans did tie it up. It's 7-7 now, with about 9 minutes left in the second quarter. We said the other game on the Monday night, of course, in the first week of every season, it's a doubleheader on Monday night. It's the Steelers over the Giants by a score of 26-16. There's not a whole lot of takeaways really that I have from that. The Giants, they stink. They did not look really good at all. Their defense kept them in the game, which was kind of surprising. But I think that was maybe more towards a kind of a lackluster Pittsburgh Steelers offense, to be honest. Both defenses did play very well, though. The Steelers defense that almost carried them to the playoffs with Mason Rudolph and company a season ago. So maybe with Ben Roethlisberger, and what he does. James Conner had an ankle injury, but Benny Snell came in and did fine. Benny Snell, in fact, 19 carries for 113 yards. So he had a good game as well. Also, something to mention, Daniel Jones, the quarterback for the Giants, 26 for 41, so I think he threw the ball maybe more than they would have liked, but, I mean, that Steelers defense was not allowing Saquon Barkley to do anything. Saquon had a nice reception where he hurdled the guy and all that. That'll make the highlights, but rushing stats, Saquon Barkley, 15 carries for 6 yards. That's an average of just 0.4 yards a carry, but the leading receiver, Darius Slayton, fantasy guy for sure, 6 catches, 102 yards, 2 touchdowns. Someone had mentioned, I saw on Twitter, that this is the first time that Daniel Jones has played in the same week with Saquon Barkley, Darius Slayton, Sterling Shepard, and I believe the tight end Evan Ingram, which are obviously the top targets in the offense. So, did not look great. Again, yet another team that struggles with offensive line issues. The Giants not expected to be a great team. I don't know where exactly they fit into top to bottom. Not a great NFC East. And I guess maybe we'll transition over to some of the games that took place in that division as we look down. It was the Washington football team in D.C. 27-17 over the Eagles. I think going into halftime or close to it, the Eagles had to control that game. And then there were some drops in big spots. Wentz had a couple of miscues. And Washington, the football team, ends up coming back into it, to go 1-0. I don't think they're going to be a great team this year. I think the Eagles may be up there. I would say probably the Cowboys, the favorite to win the division, but the Eagles, who won it a season ago and won a Super Bowl in 2018, obviously they still have Wentz and all those guys, but it's Washington who gets the win in Week 1. On Sunday night, a real interesting game. The Rams 20-17 over the Cowboys in the new stadium. That new stadium in Inglewood does look pretty cool. Over $5 billion it cost them to make that. Obviously, the Rams and the Chargers will be playing there. It was really the crucial moment of the game. It went back and forth throughout the course. Not a whole lot to take away. Obviously, Sean McVay had some nice new stuff that he was rolling out. It came, I believe it was Jalen Ramsey and Michael Gallup, if I'm not mistaken. It looked like a push-off kind of, but Jalen Ramsey sold it well, and they get the offensive pass interference to get a call, a nice deep ball called back from Dallas, and they're not able to come back after that. They lose 20-17 again to the Rams. So the way the NFC East is looking, who knows? The Giants are still going to be in it. It was only looks like DC that came away with the win. So. Obviously, who would have known that Washington would be leading the NFC East after Week 1, but that stuff always ends up changing. On Thursday night, we did talk about it when we were on the air that night. It was the Chiefs 34-20 over the Texans. Same old Chiefs, and in the same way as well, kind of the same old Texans. We'll keep our eyes kind of on that. Not a whole lot really to say. The Seahawks 38-25 over the Falcons. It's a whole new kind of Seahawks offense. They're letting Russell Wilson do more of the things he's good at. He has 4 touchdowns on the day. Did not rush it a whole lot. And then with the Falcons, Matt Ryan, 37 for 54, 450 yards, 2 touchdowns. Todd Gurley adds one on the ground. Julio Jones, 157 yards through the air. So, you would think, obviously the pass, the rush, and the receiving, the Falcons players lead all those categories, but it was the Seahawks putting up 38 points in Atlanta. The Seahawks, obviously a team to be reckoned with. They'll be a contender, I think, certainly in that NFC West. The Falcons, I think, not a great team. Maybe up there with the tank for Trevor, maybe for Matt Ryan's potential replacement. We'll have to wait and see on that, I think. The Jaguars, a candidate, although they do win. We'll talk about them next as we transition over to them. They won in their home game in Jacksonville against the Colts, 27-20. It was Minshew going 19 for 20 with a couple of touchdowns. He looked great. Basically, they didn't ask him to do too much, and he took advantage of moments. Obviously, that's where you put a quarterback in a place to succeed, only throwing 20 times. Conversely, Phillip Rivers, 36 for 46, so pretty good through the air, 363 yards and a touchdown, but it just wasn't enough. I know the Colts kind of controlled that game throughout, and then the Jaguars just took advantage of opportunities, and really that's how you win in the National Football League. And they start off 1-0 in the AFC South. The Texans lost, so the only other team that played was actually playing right now, the Tennessee Titans, 7-7 in the second quarter. We'll probably talk about that game maybe tomorrow. Some other games as we go back to the top. The Bills, 27-17 over the Jets. The Jets looked pretty inept. They scored some in garbage time. Josh Allen for the Bills, what a game. 33 of 46 through the air, 312 yards, 2 touchdowns, and then on the ground, 14 carries for 57 yards and another touchdown. He did have a fumble, but obviously that's a big part of his game, what he can do on the ground. And they almost had that playoff win in Houston last season. They're not able to win it. I think they would have gone on probably to play Kansas City, so who knows what would have happened there. But in the post-Tom Brady era in New England, myself and a lot of others had the Bills as the favorite to win the AFC East. And we'll transition now to the Patriots, 21-11 over the Dolphins. Cam Newton looked pretty good in his first game. Looks like with Josh McDaniels, the offensive coordinator, they're mixing some of the stuff that Brady did for all those years in New England with kind of some new age stuff that Cam Newton ran in Carolina, kind of the quarterback power type stuff. And he rushes for a couple of touchdowns. He's the Patriots' lead rusher, 15 carries, 75 yards, 2 touchdowns. The one QB power at the goal line, and one where he beat the guy to the edge on the rollout. Fitzpatrick for the Dolphins, 3 interceptions. So, that's kind of the Fitzpatrick experience. They make it a 3-point game, I think, late. It was 14-11. And then Cam Newton with that rushing touchdown to put the game out of reach. A Dolphins team that's not great. The offense is extremely limited. Not a great time to bring up Tua when you don't have any weapons for him to throw to. But the defense is good, and they held the Patriots offense. Who knows what they'll really look like to 21 points. So, for New England, we're going to have to wait and see. The verdict's out. I don't know that Cam Newton's going to play great in big games. That was kind of his thing in Carolina. We'll always remember, I think, the biggest game of his career, Super Bowl 50 in San Francisco, when he really struggles against a good Denver Broncos defense and an aging Peyton Manning. That was one of the more interesting Super Bowl matchups over the past few years. Some other games to talk about. Oh, man, the Bears in Detroit, 27-23 over the Lions. The Lions pretty much had control of the game pretty much the whole way. I think late in the fourth quarter, I want to say with like 5 minutes left, it was the Lions had about like a 98% chance to win. And of course they blow it. That's something that I'm going to have to go back and maybe watch some film on if I can. Matt Stafford, 300 yards and a touchdown. Throws the ball 42 times. Adrian Peterson, and still in that renaissance period, 14 carries for 93 yards. And also through the air, Danny Amendola, 5 catches for 81 yards. So they have weapons. And then it was the Bears scored late, I know, to take the lead. And the Lions, I believe, one of the last plays of the game, they had DeAndre Swift open in the end zone. Stafford a good pass. And Swift, the running back, the rookie from Georgia, just cannot corral it. So Matt Patricia caught a lot of heat after the game for blowing it. But if DeAndre Swift makes an open catch, in the end zone, the Lions would have won 30-27, and I guess the narrative would have been they let it get away, but Matt Stafford comes back late as he's done so many times in his career. But instead, the Bears and Mitch Trubisky, who was really bad most of the way through, comes back inexplicably in the fourth quarter to make the Bears 1-0 and the Lions 0-1. The other NFC North matchup, a dominant one. The scoreboard a little bit misleading. The Packers 43-34 over the Vikings. Aaron Rodgers 32 of 44, 364 yards through the air, and 4 touchdowns. Really, I mean, obviously, this is a revenge season for him just because the Packers draft Jordan Love in the first round. So, I don't know. He looked really good. The Vikings' defense looked very bad. They really couldn't pressure Rodgers at any point. They're one of the teams, I guess, in the league, the Packers, that have a good offensive line. And I think the Vikings scored some points in garbage time. It's a 9-point win for the Pack, but I think the Packers look really good, especially in the NFC North. Really, the Vikings don't look great, albeit after week 1. The Lions, who I guess were a sneaky playoff pick, absolutely just blew a game against a Bears team that's not great. So there you go. There's your NFC North right there. So I think the Packers, once again, a favorite to win that division and go on to the postseason. In Carolina, it was the Raiders of Las Vegas, 34-30 over the Panthers. That's a game I'll have to take a look at as we preview the Bucs game against the Panthers in Raymond James on Sunday. For Carolina, Teddy Bridgewater looked pretty good, 22 of 34, 270 and a touchdown. McCaffrey carried the load, 23 carries, 96 yards, 2 touchdowns. Obviously, the Bucs have been pretty good at stifling him, and I would expect to see that on Sunday. And through the air, Robbie Anderson, the new addition from the Jets, 6 catches, 115 yards, and a touchdown. Neither of the defenses are great. Matt Rule in his first game coming over from Baylor. You like maybe the Panthers' feature there. For them, it was good to see, I guess, Teddy Bridgewater have a pretty good game replacing Cam Newton and some of the guys they trotted out last year. The Raiders go on to win. Their defense does not look great, but I guess Derek Carr and that offense was enough to get it done. I don't really have much else to say about that. A couple other games, the Ravens 38-6 over the Browns. The Ravens still look very, very good. Lamar Jackson 20 of 25, 275 yards, 3 passing touchdowns. Hollywood Brown goes over 100 receiving yards. And obviously the 38-6 score, the Browns looked not great, but albeit against a really good Ravens team. On the road, the Chargers 1-0, 16-13 over the Cincinnati Bengals. That was a tough break for Cincinnati. Joe Burrow actually looks decent. He scored from 23 yards out on the ground for his first NFL touchdown. He goes 23 for 36, 193 yards, no touchdowns, and an interception. Gets sacked 3 times. A quarterback rating of just 20. So I guess I may have to take that back. A pass rating of 66. I don't have a great concept of either of those stats. I think they're both kind of a little bit baloney, but neither of them I know are good. So tough. AJ Green 5 catches, 51 yards. But obviously the Chargers doing just enough. I know that Cincinnati did get down basically in the red zone. A super chip shot field goal for the kicker, Brandy Bullock. And he was 2 for 2 at that time, including a long of 50. But it gets right up there and he misses it. And that would have tied it at 16-16 and sent it to overtime. But instead he misses it. He said he basically mid-kick pulled a hammy or a calf or something, which I believe a lot of people, including some former NFL kickers, have called that to be kind of bogus. Makes sense that he would just kind of cover his own tail on that. But a really tough break. That would have been a cool thing. And Joe Burrow's first career game, and maybe come back and maybe they win it in overtime, but who knows. Obviously, the Bengals not a contender necessarily in an AFC North. But the Chargers get off, they're going to have to be really good to keep up with the Chiefs in the AFC West, but they get off started with a win. The Bengals with the loss. And then the only other game, this is one that I'll have to take a look at. I did pick the Cardinals. I think they covered, but won outright, 24-20 over the San Francisco 49ers in San Fran. Again, 24-20. The Niners, as far as I know, controlled the game most of the way through, but it was the Cardinals and Kyler Murray that came back late. The Cardinals, some offensive additions. Kyler Murray through the air throws 40 times, which I'm not sure under Cliff Kingsbury that's what they want. 230 yards, a touchdown, a pick. On the ground, though, 13 carries, 91 yards. He's our lead rusher. Kenny Drake, 16 of 20 yards, so under 4 yards a carry there. But then through the air, DeAndre Hopkins, the new addition, and the trade over from Houston. All they have to give up is David Johnson. DeAndre Hopkins, 14 catches, 151 yards. No touchdowns, though. Larry Fitz, 4 of 34. I believe this is his last NFL season, so if you're a fan of his, definitely check out some Cardinals games because we're enjoying the final stage of his career as he'd been described as one of the class acts really in NFL history. Arizona is his city. He could have gone somewhere else to try and win a title, but he's really been great, in that community by all accounts and all the things like that. So he wanted to stay around and kind of get maybe a good Cardinals run jump started and maybe potentially be a part of it. As Kyler Murray, not necessarily in his prime, he still have some developing to do, but by all means, he's transitioned pretty nicely to the NFL already. Obviously, Cliff Kingsbury running the college offense over at Texas Tech coming into the NFL. So, that offense may be able to do some things. They scored 24 points on a San Francisco defense that carried them to the Super Bowl a year ago and looked pretty decent through about 3.5 quarters against the Chiefs. Obviously, Patrick Mahomes comes back and wins it. For San Francisco, it was Jimmy G, 19 of 33, 250 throwing yards, 2 touchdowns, no picks. Not much else. Raheem Mostert, 15 carries for 56 yards, so not a whole lot going on the ground. And then through receiving, Raheem Mostert, the leading receiver, 4 catches for 95 yards. They didn't have a guy catch more than 4 passes. George Kittle, 4 catches, 44 yards. So the Niners not up to a great start. A lot of people had predicted kind of an offseason back to regression maybe for San Francisco. The Cardinals as a kind of a dark horse playoff team. I think Kyler Murray had a great rookie season and another offseason with Cliff Kingsbury getting that consistency. Yeah, DeAndre Hopkins, really the sky is the limit. He rushes for almost 100 yards in week 1, so I think by all accounts pretty good there. I look forward to checking out that game on NFL Game Pass. And really the last thing we have to discuss is previewing tomorrow's Rays contest. I do want to mention as well that the Lightning and Islanders are playing starting at 8 o'clock. The puck will drop tomorrow night. The Lightning up 3-1, so they can put it away. We will be on the air when that game wraps, win or loss. For the Rays, though, at 6:40 from Tropicana Field, the Rays at 30-17, taking up the Washington Nationals at 17-28. Now, the Nationals did win both games in that 2-game set in Washington about a week ago. Really caught the Rays at a bad spot, really the worst the Rays have been really since the beginning of the season. That 0-5 road trip, I would say, that was probably the low point of the season, and that was about as close as the Rays have come since. They'll be taking on Anibal Sanchez, who they faced last time around. 2-4 record and a 6.81 ERA, but boy, was he good against the Rays, which was his last start, in fact. Went 5 innings, a 3-run ball, 2 walks, 6 strikeouts. So I guess really the stat line wasn't that good, but in 88 pitches, he was really fooling some Rays hitters. So I don't really know how it's going to look. The righty pitcher, who knows? Maybe they'll go 9 lefties again and maybe try that experience. And the starting pitcher for the Rays, John Curtis, he's going to be the opener. He will precede Ryan Yarbrough. So Curtis 3-0 with a 1.53 ERA. You would think maybe he'll just get through the first inning, maybe 2. I don't know exactly what the idea is with Ryan Yarbrough. I said, we'll find out probably during the game and during the broadcast. I'll be listening to the radio broadcast, maybe checking into the telecast on Fox Sports Sun now and again just to maybe get a feel for what's going on. Everyone in the bullpen is relatively in play. Nick Anderson and Castillo both are on a day's rest. And then the guys who pitched yesterday, Thompson and Fairbanks, neither of them played great. I guess they could be good to go on a back-to-back. Slegers pitched 3 innings yesterday, so he would be out. But basically everyone, I don't think they've announced the move to bring up Oliver Drake just yet, but you look at other guys. So it's a lot of guesswork, but we'll say maybe Curtis for 2 innings, maybe Ryan Yarbrough for 4, I would guess. If they're going to go an opener, they don't expect him to really go deep. Looks like they may have to get him worked back up instead of having him start outright. So that would get you through 6, and depending on how the game's going, you can sprinkle in maybe some Ryan Sheriff if there's a bunch of lefties. Other guys, Aaron Loop is on a day's rest. He could also go against lefties. And then from the righty side of the pen, if you want to go Thompson on a back-to-back, you can do so. Fairbanks as well on a back-to-back. But I think really Nick Anderson and Diego Castillo in the back end, if you have the lead, is who you'd go to on a day's rest to close out a game. It does not look like, at least on ESPN, on the Rays roster, that Oliver Drake has been called up. But if they make the official move to send Ji-Man Choi to the injured list, they'd be able to bring someone up and activate Drake potentially from said injured list. The lineup, I have no idea. Obviously, it's going to be a lot of lefties against the righty Sanchez. I was part joking about the 9 lefties, but who really knows right now? I guess, outfield, left to right, Meadows, Kiermaier, and I don't know, maybe if they want to go lefty, it would be Brett Phillips in right, but I would guess maybe Arosa Reyna in right. And then the infield from left to right, it would be, my guess, Joey Wendell at third, Adames at shortstop, Brandon Lau at second, and at first base, if they want to go, full lefties, I would go with Nate Lowe at first. It could potentially be Mike Brasso, I don't know. And then catching, probably Michael Perez. And then obviously he'll be catching John Curtis being followed by Ryan Yarbrough. So that's the way that will line up, and that will cap off a pretty nice show. One of the more interesting shows that we've had the honor of doing, obviously being able to talk about a Tampa Bay Lightning game, a Tampa Bay Buccaneers game, and some Tampa Bay Rays games. Obviously, the common theme being Tampa Bay. It feels so good to have all these teams really looking pretty good. The Bucs, not so much, but they'll be able to turn it around, you think. Rays headed for some success. Lightning potentially sniffing a Stanley Cup, so that'll be all good to see. We'll be back on the air tomorrow night after the Rays game. We'll have some Lightning to talk about, maybe some more Bucs to talk about. So we look forward to talking to you then. And as always, we will see you then.
Sports Radio 101.9 FM and Sports Radio 66. The Fan.
HBC.